Welcome back to Two C's with a pod special third. Look at this. I got a guy here with me.
Whoa.
I got a
In
guy
real
with
life.
IRL, Bruce Pilcher in my living room. Well, actually
Wow.
dining room.
Yeah.
We got a special episode here that there's only one man that could sit in on this. We brought back our resident Two C's baseball historian.
Exactly.
Mr. Bruce Pilcher to talk about this monumental day. Everybody wants to celebrate the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, anniversaries.
Right.
Sure.
That's not us. We celebrate the 23rd anniversary of things.
That's right.
Sure.
And so today we are here to do a watch along and to celebrate the 23rd anniversary of Mark McGwire breaking Roger Maris's record.
Right.
So get in your Wayback Machines with us. Fire up your YouTube.
Local kid Roger Mayers, by the way.
Roger
Sorry.
Maris, Kansas City
Local
guy.
kid. Yeah. People don't know that. Not a ton of people know that.
Fire up your YouTube machine over there and punch in. Mark McGwire hits number 62. And we are actually watching a WGN broadcast.
Be careful what number you type in. Make sure it's 62. Very important.
Mark McGwire hits number 62. And we're going to start at the 5 minute and 41 second mark because we don't need to hear these marks, talking it in and all that. So
right.
We're gonna get right into the game.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Here we go.
Bruce, count us in. Give us a 3, 2, 1. When you say 1, I'm gonna hit play and we're gonna do a watch along. Here we go. You ready, Matt?
Yes.
We're watching the September 8th, 1998 game between the Cubs and the Cardinals in St. Louis. This was in September and definitely a good time of the year because it was early fall and everyone was building up to this maximum idea that we would have someone break this record of Maris's, which had only stood for 3 years. But now in 98, we have Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa both on this tirade of trying to capitalize that moment of getting more than 61 homers. Now, toward the end of this, there was some dry spells for McGwire. He had about a week before he hit this home run in this game, he was not hitting as many as he had been regularly. But then after that, he had another brief spell. But then toward the end of the season, which is a few weeks away from this broadcast, he got clear up to 70. And on the last day, he hit 69 and 70 on the very last day of the season, of the last home game season anyway. But McGwire was quite a character. And really, as we will see here, you can see how muscular he was. And his nickname is Big Mac. And old Big Mac really brought a lot of attention to the game then. Remember, they'd had a strike 3 years prior to this.
Hold on a sec. Hold on. Give me a 3, 2, 1. We're going to hit play and we'll talk through the strike and all that. So count us in. 1, 2, 3. And play. We are at the 5 minute, 41, 42, 43.
First baseman.
Yes. So you see Mac is taking his warm-ups here.
He's taking his warm-up tosses.
We're about to see all-time Chicago Cubs great Lance Johnson come up to
Lance was their leadoff hitter, left-hander, pretty fast, played second base. Both these teams had really pretty good lineups.
So number 61, was it hit the day before? Was it hit on the 7th?
Let me think. I can't be sure I didn't remember that, Andy. I will say that it was pretty close, although he did have kind of a bad spell there right before that. But then when he hit 62, he had a couple of days, and then he had another dry spell. And then toward the end is when he jacked it clear up to 70.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of thought it was a couple of days. I thought, he kind of got, I almost, my conspiracy theory was like, oh, they're milking it for the, he's waiting not to hit a few because they're getting all the press and all the eyes on him. But no, I feel like I remember it took him a second once he got real close.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. Maybe 3 or 4, not a ton, but like 2 to 3 games if I remember. But I could be completely.
I think that's right, Matt.
So much pressure.
I think
really
that's right.
Interesting. You see all the cameras flashing. You see the sold out stadium. Again, just a really probably one of the really marker times where all eyes were on a baseball game, beyond the World Series, beyond, in some ways, even some of the what would be considered bigger games.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did hit it on the day before.
Good.
Oh, he did. Oh, yeah. Totally wrong.
This is game number 145. So
145.
If you remember, part of the asterisk on Maris was that so Babe Ruth set the record with 60, but he did it in 154 game season.
Right.
Maris hit his 61st. It was like the first season. Was it? What year was that? Was that?
I
19?
think you're right. It's about the time they instituted 162 games.
Maris hit his in the 162nd game.
Right. He almost didn't get it done the very last day.
Yeah. Maris was sitting on 61, and then nobody touched that 61 for quite a while. Like there was a couple guys that got in there, friend of the show, Albert Bell, Joey Bell.
Yeah, Joey Bell, piece of work.
He
one of the kindest guys in baseball. Let me tell you.
No, I know you're right.
No.
But Maris hit his he hit his 61 and 61.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're looking at 27 years between that record had stood.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. And again, it was just a lot of fun, and obviously it made 10 times funner with Sosa. So Sosa's in the house for this, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's just the whole thing came together, right? For baseball. What a miracle for baseball in some ways, right? Like, but then sadly it does have that undercurrent that we got to talking about a little bit prior to. But tell us more. Yeah, you were talking a little bit about the season that the Cardinals were having prior to, so like let's hear kind of more of that build up to what was
as we see Lance Johnson fly out to center field for the first out of the game.
Langford was in center.
Well, if Lance Johnson was better, he wouldn't have flow out there, but whatever.
Hernandez. But how's the Cardinals doing up to this point as a team?
Well, they were doing pretty well, Matt, but they didn't really have that banner season. I was talking to him before we started watching that they only won 83 games that year. Well, that sounds pretty good, but that's really only 4 over 500. And they finished third in the Central Division, which means I don't even know if they had a wild card berth then or not, but I know they didn't get very far if they did get the playoffs. And actually the Cubs won that Central Division that year. So what was surprising about this team, with a bunch of good players, they just didn't put it together that well. And if you had time, we could go over the roster. A lot of these names, even though you guys are younger, you would know a lot of these names if I named you the 1998 team, because the guys.
Ray Langford. I remember you said playing center. Ray Langford's a good ball player.
Yeah, he had many years.
The great thing about watch-alongs is we're going to see these guys come up to the plate.
Yeah,
right. But what I'm always curious about is, and it goes back to the age-old conversation of distraction on a team. Right. And does a thing like McGwire's situation actually kind of hurt the team as a whole? The attention, the pressure, all that piece of it. And so not that that's McGwire's fault, nor is it, in any way avoidable. It's just kind of more the nature of the media nowadays, the pressure nowadays and how it is. But then maybe there's something to that,
You raise a good point, Matt. It's tough to keep chemistry when everybody is publicizing one player so heavily. And that's the bottom line. Well, in the defense of the Cardinals, I think La Russa had already gone through a lot of this with the Oakland teams where Canseco and McGwire had been. And so he kind of knew that you got to keep that chemistry in order. So you got to do what you can to see that the other players are properly recognized. And I think they had a pretty good medium on that, in spite of all the circus-like activity around it. There's a pass ball.
Yeah, we take 83 wins. Yeah, that's what's funny is I think we're all on the record probably of how we feel about the Cardinals, all three of us here on this international podcast here. And I'm no fan of the Cardinals, and a lot of it has to do with jealousy. I mean, it's pure they have always been a good ball team. They always get the attention here in Missouri. There's kind of a natural rivalry there, of course. So when you say, yeah, we had a kind of a down season, had 83 wins for us, that's a pretty darn good season for the Royals. We go, hey, the things are looking up around here, and so it isn't just an interesting thing as well. Look at Mark Grace up there.
Yeah,
good
there's
ball player. How long Mark Grace played?
Oh, he had a lot of years too.
Back in the day when I was doing the video games, and you could make your own team.
Right.
Yeah, Mark Grace was always I always make sure that Mark Grace got good ratings.
He's A+, man. I mean, he gave you the good bad. He had good defense, good solid hitter, solid player. Uh-oh. Up the middle.
Scored a run.
Oh boy.
Well, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, I'm curious. No spoilers, but who wins this game? That's the other piece, right? Is like, I don't know if we want to spoil it or not.
I hope the Cardinals don't get shut out in this game.
Wow.
I don't think that's going to happen, Andy. But it was a nice hit that McGwire right up the middle.
He's just always
talk a lot about
vintage Mark Grace
there too, really. But that would be another subject. That's Royce Clayton, who's at shortstop there. And he was the successor to Ozzie. And there's whole many stories about that, because that caused Ozzie a lot of difficulty because he wasn't really ready to give up the starting position. Right. But it ended up that La Russa decided that it was time for them to have another shortstop. And so Royce Clayton became their St. Louis shortstop.
I remember Royce Clayton. Yeah, I remember. It's amazing how much this was a time when, again, for baseball, so needed that it brought your eyes to the game. And so in some ways all the peripheral people, you still remember in some ways too, from these years, because it was such a time when everyone was watching baseball all the time or following it. It was,
That's right.
And then the WGN piece.
Look at WGN things, Matt, because that strike in 94, 95 really hurt baseball.
Sure.
And a lot of people are still, even to this day. I was talking to somebody, she said, no, I'm never going to go back. And I said, what are you talking about? It's 25 years ago. Come on. What do you mean you're not going to go back?
She's still mad at the strike. That's amazing. Well, some people, but that's Midwest for you in some ways too, right? We will hold a grudge.
Yeah.
We'll be as kind as we can be, but we'll hold a grudge on you. So,
that's right.
But that's a great point.
Well, and that's the other thing too, that, I know we're going to get into the aftermath and the controversy later, but, when we look at it with 1998 eyes and you talk about sandbagging and stuff, this was a nationally televised game.
Yeah, that's right.
And I believe it was in the middle of the week.
Yep. There's another hit. Sosa hit that one.
So, I mean, Fox got a national televised baseball game, on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. And, we've talked a little bit about like TV ratings and stuff like that, or everything's down in the summer.
Yeah.
Because people are on vacation. It's daylight till 8, 9 o'clock at night. So, where it gets, dark at 5, 6 in the afternoon, people aren't like, oh, well, let me go inside and watch TV. They're out doing stuff. And, there's just more activities going on during the summer. So, for baseball to kind of, to that point, 94, that strike season, a lot of people did not, 95, 96, 97, like people were not really, like baseball had kind of lost its appeal. It's lost its luster.
Well, when you get out of a swing, when you get used to something not being there, you find things to replace it, and absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part of it. Look at this shot. What a miracle. They're just dying in the production booth right now, right? That Sosa hit that single right here at the beginning of the game so that you can get all those shots of McGwire, Sosa together, chumming it up, laughing. Right. I mean, again, it was this level of storybook piece that really all came together. So again, I think there's always been rumors of, Traxel kind of, tossing one up to McGwire too, to just kind of get it over with, the game, depending on the situation and game, whatever it was. So I do think the other piece is, like you said, and I'll go back to your point, WGN, right? Whether it was this game, we were seeing a lot of Cubs games. Right. And we've talked about Michael Jordan and the Bulls, right? That's a huge part of their kind of national appeal. is
right,
that
man.
WGN was always on our TVs,
That's right.
Chicago channels, so we got to see them a lot,
Yeah, this was before the time where like today, your team is always on.
Yeah,
exactly.
If you have the right cable channel.
There's Gaetti driving in a run.
Damn, Cubs are on fire.
And the Cubs they're gonna need a lead. The Cardinals have this McGwire guy. He can turn the game.
They really started off in a good fashion, these Cubs in this game.
It looks like there's some heat there with McGwire and Gaetti. They almost look like they're gonna fight.
Former Minnesota Twin, right? He was around the Gaetti forever.
And here's an interesting thing about Gaetti in this season. Bruce, tell us about Gary Gaetti.
I was looking at the rosters here with you guys, and I was surprised that Gaetti played with both teams that year. He played 91 games with the Cardinals and about 40 with the Cubs. So in September here, he must have been one of those guys that was traded toward in the trade period, and it ended up playing with the Cubs in this game, which I thought was interesting. And you were right, Matt. He played for a lot of people. He played for the Twins. He played for the Royals.
Yeah.
He had a lengthy career as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Some of these guys just kind of journeymen, but are always good ball players. Or there's guys like Mark Grace. Oh, nice video here, commercial. But like Mark Grace, who pretty much did he play his whole career at the Cubs? I mean, almost did at the end, did he go somewhere?
Well, I think Grace might have had a little time with Arizona before he was done, but
that's right.
But I don't really.
Everybody went to Arizona there at the end for a while.
Yeah, they really started to pick a lot of people up before they were done. I was thinking of people like Steve Finley.
Right, exactly.
People like that. Exactly. They ended up, and there were others that ended up in Arizona before they quit. Yeah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Matt Williams even ended up being either a coach or manager for Arizona.
Matt Williams, you're right. He did. He absolutely did.
Yeah.
Good timing there, producer. We got to watch a little toe fungus commercial.
Nice.
Maybe
look who else was in this game.
Delino DeShields.
Yeah. Oh, they had a good lineup, Matt. Look at there. Tatis, McGwire, Langford, Gant. Why is this team only won 83 games?
I think Matt brought it up. I mean, you've got a distraction in the locker room.
Yeah,
it's hard, and it sometimes in baseball it just doesn't come together.
Yeah,
and then the other piece is what I'm not loving about this, Bruce, is how many of these guys now have juniors that are playing currently, or juniors of their juniors almost. Like isn't there a Tatis Jr.? There's a Delino DeShields Jr. Right, is a ball player.
That's true.
Vlad Guerrero's kid.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It is a little bit disheartening.
Yeah. It just means we're old.
Yeah.
No, I know.
You guys are getting older.
It's terrible. Who's this? Oh, Delino DeShields. He had a good career too. Yeah. Good little slap hitter.
Yeah.
Good little player.
He's a
minor league. Well, he was a minor league coach with the Reds, but now he's a coach with the Reds.
Look at this. We're gonna bunt
to get
on.
Delino. He's in.
You get it?
Did he make it?
Oh, they didn't. He had to be there. Yeah, he is. He's there. That's good.
All right. We are at 19, 28, 29, 30, 31. If for those of you scoring at home or if you're alone.
Yeah, who's this pitching for the Cubs?
Traxel.
Oh, that's Traxel with the hair?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
That wasn't a real good throw, but he was probably there anyway.
Got himself. So you think that Traxel grooved one?
Oh, I can't remember. How late is it in this game? Again, I don't remember. Maybe it was the Bonds. Maybe it was more the Bonds one.
Yeah.
That beat McGwire's. That was the one that was a little more suspect than this one. I can't remember.
The Cal Ripken one is pretty legendary for being grooved.
Yeah, that's true. That would probably be the most one with that kind of publicity.
But, I mean, okay, so let me play devil's advocate here. You're Steve Traxel. Do you really want to be the guy that was known as the guy that gave up 62?
I don't know. I no, but I also know there's also some guys that also wouldn't care either. Yeah. Okay. Like maybe me on my end, I'm going no, but I also know there's some guys that could easily just say, hey, I'm going to put one up for him. Now, the difference between the difference between literally throwing him a lollipop and just kind of grooving one is a difference too. Like if you don't want to give up the 62, then you freaking throw him 4 balls and walk him.
Right.
There's a level of, and that was happening to Bonds. It was happening to him, and all of them as they got, especially as this, long ball era became a thing.
Right.
It became a thing to almost just kind of hack a shack them basically, and just the equivalent of fouling Shaquille O'Neal and putting him on the line, which is essentially walking these guys rather than pitch to them.
Was it La Russa that walked Bonds with the bases loaded?
Probably
intentionally walked.
He absolutely would and not care.
I wouldn't put it past Tony to do that.
Of course not. He's the only guy that would just care and sit there in that media afterwards and just take every question and tell them all to kiss his butt, that he did it because he thought it was the best thing to do. I can't believe he's still waddling out there and hollering about but then here you go. The White Sox are winning, right? And they're in the first place. So what can you say?
Well, we were talking about this too. Who got MVP that year?
This year,
Sosa. That kid right there.
Sosa
right there on the screen.
Yeah.
And Sosa had a good batting average that year as well. So these guys, they were doing more than just hitting home runs. They really were.
Yeah. Sosa's, honestly, objectively, Sosa, right. Sosa was because he would give you some defense, right, too. A little bit when McGwire is playing a position that's going to be tough, even in its nature, to give you much. Not that he was a bad defensive baseman, but he also, it's hard to compare to playing, in the outfield.
Well, we were talking a little earlier too about
he's picked off, isn't he?
Got him. Yeah.
I would think
Traxel's always had a great move. The 90s people started sniffing that record.
Yeah.
So that was the the year before McGwire hit 58.
58. Yeah.
And Griffey hit 56. Griffey always seemed to be chasing it too.
Yeah.
But he always seemed to get hurt.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the year before too, McGwire got traded to the Cardinals midway through the season.
Yes, that's right, from Oakland.
The one that kind of stands out is like Brady Anderson.
Yeah.
Remember Brady Anderson? He had those Luke Perry sideburns.
Yeah.
And he hit 50. And then there was
he with the Orioles?
He was with the Orioles, yeah. And then there was, we talked about Albert Bell and Cecil Fielder had both hit 50.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first time, like Fielder in 90.
Yeah, here's your first at bat of McGwire's.
Yeah. All right. Let's drop in here and see what they've got. We're gonna lay out. We'll listen. We'll track it. And McGwire comes to bat. And look at this place. It's Traxel. Continued throughout the night. The 1-0 pitch. It's 2-0. Ending booing. McGwire has walked an unbelievable 147 times. The 2-0 now.
These captions are great. The choir has walked an incredible 147 times. Mark the choir. Matthew McGwire now.
Say the answer would be affirmative, my friend. But I got to tell you that Renee Latchman is so far away that McGwire can't see the sign anywhere. 3 balls, no strikes. A pitch. That's ball, ground ball toward the shortstop on the 3-0.
That's on 3-0. Yeah, so
he had a hittable pitch there on 3-0.
Yeah, he did.
He had a very hittable pitch.
There were a lot of things that come around. I think about it too. You think about the new stadium in St. Louis around that time, which was built perfectly for him, whether purposely or not. He was able to kind of have that shorter porch there, and I don't know. It's just really interesting again to see the level of production value in this. of how they're side to side and with Sammy Sosa, as he's also taken the play, and how good Sosa was.
Right.
Like, again, there was a level of like perfect characters in here too. You've got, a kind of a younger, the black kid, who's got a little more charisma, smile, just a happy-go-lucky fun guy. Then you got McGwire, who's more this, white guy who's just more of like a working class, big, strong dude. That's like, I mean, there's so many levels of storybook to this that every time I keep watching this, I keep going back to like, baseball could not have written a better script,
No. You're right. Man.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that it was kind of one of those things where they kind of needed it.
Yes,
they needed it to bring people back.
Desperately needed it.
That's very true.
And that was the, regardless of what happened 5-6 years down the road,
right? That
these two rejuvenated interest in baseball and in general, right? So
absolutely,
will they get there? Yeah. And I think that ultimately, I would say that Major League Baseball 100%. Well, first of all, Major League Baseball knows, but there's also the Players Association.
Yes.
So you've got the MLB and you've got the MLBPA.
Yeah.
So, realistically, it would be more of an issue that the MLBPA would have, because, right. I mean, they're the ones that, okay, either we're all going to do it or we're not.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's what they're running into now with the sticky stuff for the pitchers, right? I mean, that's the piece, is that it does, no matter how many, and let's be honest, that's it's not just their union, right? It's every union has little sub-unions inside the union, or little, and then every organization has that, right? Yes. So your pitchers, yes, are part of a larger baseball players union, but then they also are competing and playing against, everyday players and hitters who are going, hey, bros, you can't be putting all this crap on the baseball. It's just, we can't do it. And so then you get, in some ways, two sides in the same union, right? Where you've got it right here with steroids. Obviously, if we're going to go to that conversation now of like, yes, exactly, like, is this a fair playing field for all of us, and who's mad? Is it the owners? I don't know. I think the owners are the least mad, right? They're the least worried. They're putting butts in seats and they're making money and people are watching on TV.
That's right.
Well, and this is also the time too where you're probably, cable's really starting to become a thing.
Yes.
It's becoming, everyone's starting to have it.
Yes.
We're starting to see 24-hour news stations, because remember 3 years before this was the OJ. And I think, was the OJ trial over by this time? I think it was.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, okay.
But so it was all kind of still boiling, because you had the civil trial after you had all this, but I think that, it did go close to 2 years, but I don't think it was.
Yeah. So the nation kind of needed a feel good story.
Yes.
And
but then again, it's got some racial undertones though, of like the black guy and the white guy both going for it, and again, it's a really interesting dynamic.
Well, and Sosa kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
on it too. Like the few years before, it was Griffey. Like, I think everybody had assumed that Griffey was going to be the guy.
Yeah, because he was younger. You're right.
Because Griffey was he was so mashing these things. Like, Griffey would always start out super hot.
Yeah.
And he would be well ahead of pace.
Yeah.
And then he'd catch a hamstring, or there'd be some nagging injury that would take him out for 10 or 15 games. And then he ultimately would fall short. And I think that's the interesting thing. I know we're going to talk about the steroids. That's the interesting thing about McGwire, is he was able to break it because he didn't get hurt.
Yes, it's true.
So that's what sidebarred a lot of these guys that were making runs at this, is that they would get hurt.
Yep.
And they would go on the DL for a 15-day DL.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with baseball, is it's every day.
Yeah.
So every day you could wake up and you could say, well, where's McGwire and Sosa?
Yeah.
Where are they? They're chasing a ghost. Where are they in relationship to that? The Olympics were just kind of in, not too distant rear view. I like watching like the swimming and the track and stuff like that. And they have that world record line.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are in the pool and they're getting close to the world record, and they've got that world record line, and you're seeing that line move. You can wake up every morning and you could see, Sosa hit 2 last night. So Sosa's at 47 and McGwire's at 43. Oh, yeah. McGwire hit 3 and Sosa didn't hit any. Oh, McGwire hit, and you could see him kind of going back and forth through the whole year. But
is that a Drew Carey patch that the Chicago Cubs have on, by the way?
Yeah, Drew Carey. Yeah, famous Chicago Cub announcer, Drew Carey.
Harry Carey. Oh, no, Carey. It did look like Drew Carey for a second. I'm an idiot. Did he just die around then?
Speaking of Harry Carey, this Chip Carey that's on this broadcast, that's his son. Grandson of Harry Carey. Grandson.
Oh God, grandson. Of course it is. Harry Carey. I can never do a good Harry Carey.
This Ron Gant, he was a free swinger too, and but he was another one of these guys that struck out so much that it kind of overshadowed a lot of his value because he would have such a high strikeout rate.
Yeah. So did he play for the Braves too?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So speaking of strikeouts, you guys fill time. I'm going to look to see how many strikeouts McGwire had.
I bet it was an astronomical figure, but he also had to look at the walks too.
Exactly.
In the stands.
Right.
Cardinal Hall of Famer was in the stands that night.
Who's this?
Red Steendienst.
Oh, there's a Red too. He's no Red. Yeah, that's a guy I don't know. I'm not familiar with outside of St. Louis. He must not be too big a.
Yeah, that's another guy. He's another guy, Matt, that was overshadowed by Musial, even though they're close friends and played along the same lines. He's a Hall of Famer, and yet he probably doesn't get nearly as much recognition as Musial and some of the other Hall of Famers.
That's interesting, yeah, because I honestly had no clue about him. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not a baseball historian by no means, but I usually know, especially the Cardinals and Royals guys. So
here's one for you.
Riggleman.
All right, I'm gonna quiz you guys on.
Okay.
Oh boy.
We're gonna do some over-unders for Mark McGwire this year.
Okay.
So over-unders. Okay, doubles. So he hit 70 home runs. Did he have over 50 doubles or under?
I'll say over.
I maybe under. I'll go just for contrarian sake.
Well under.
Really?
21
couldn't lug him out. He couldn't leg him out.
Doubles.
21 doubles.
That's almost you sure you're reading the right numbers?
I am. Yeah.
He got round in first, Bruce, and he was like, "Hey, it's either a home run or a single for me, guys."
Yeah, okay. Here's a fun one. Triples, 0 or 1.
Oh.
Well, he didn't have much foot speed, so I'll go 0.
So 0 or 1 on triples.
I'll go 0.
I just think it has to be 0 too.
It is. It's 0.
Yeah, it'd have to be some sort of air situation that he ended up on third.
Yeah, right.
Stolen bases, 0 or 1.
I'll say 1.
Pass balls that they didn't call. So yes, 1.
He got 1.
There it
one
is.
Stolen base.
There you go.
He's the only man in history to have 71 combined home runs and steals in the same season.
That is so. But that's why you don't win the MVP. That goes back to Bruce, what we're saying, right? You don't win the MVP when all you do is hit home runs, and he did kind of hit that point where like that's literally all he did.
So did he? More strikeouts or more bases on balls this year?
Ooh.
Boy, that's a good question. I'll say more strikeouts.
I think that I'll say more walks, but I think Bruce is probably right. Because I think really the phenomenon of really heavily walking guys came more around Bonds. So I'll go walks, but I think Bruce is right on. I don't know.
He had 162 base on balls.
Yeah.
And he had to have more strikeouts than
155 strikeouts.
Oh.
So the interesting thing is he played in 155 games that year. So he struck out an average of basically he walked an average a game, struck out an average a game, and basically if you went to a Cardinals game in 1998, you were pretty much assured to see Mark McGwire strike out, get walked, and every other game hit a home run.
Hit a home run. I mean,
that was the
odds
that was
are astronomical. That's his MO.
To show you how much publicity was going on right now, we're watching the governor of Illinois, Jim Edgar, on there.
So why is the governor of Illinois on here?
Yeah.
Like, all right, we're at 35-41. So that's the governor of Illinois.
Yeah.
So
Jim Edgar.
Illinois trying to get that East St. Louis love.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't seem like like, yeah, if this was in Chicago, then you're right. Exactly. But this
he's like, I'm going to go check the, you know what? I think I'm going to go check out East St. Louis for this week. Look at this. Look at McGwire with it.
Oh, big D, defensive, Big Mac. Boom. There you go. See, that's MVP status right there.
It really
big
is.
High pop up there.
Yeah. So he led the league. This year in slugging percentage, on base percentage, and obviously home runs.
Yeah.
Bases on balls. And then he led the league the following year in home runs and RBI with 65 and 147. So he had the same amount of RBI.
Yeah.
Both.
See, that's why you can put up with all those strikeouts for all those numbers. I mean, if you get 147 RBIs, you can strike out.
How about that RBI total for those guys?
That's insane.
156 for Sosa at the end of the year and 147 for McGwire.
That's like, honestly, and I don't know, I guarantee you could look at some early 2000 Royals teams and they did not score that many runs, period.
So
throughout the season. I mean, we're joking, but I mean, I don't know. The numbers would be shockingly close. I can almost guarantee you. And I guarantee you guys, you could add up. I know you could add up their RBI totals of their whole lineup and not get to 156. Guarantee it.
So Sammy in 98 played in 159 games.
Yeah. So he only missed 3 games.
He led the league in runs. Okay. He led the league in RBI.
What was it? 156?
McGwire was 147. He drove in 158.
158.
Obviously the 66 home runs.
That's just stupid.
Now
there were signs here now
Sammy,
for his 59.
How many doubles do we think Sammy hit?
Okay.
So he hit 66 home runs. Did he go over 30 doubles?
Well, McGwire was under, but
McGwire was at 21.
Yeah, McGwire was quite a bit under. I don't know why I keep thinking that maybe Sosa might have been over, but
I think he's over too.
So
it would be strictly a guess.
So Sammy only hit 20 doubles.
Oh,
interesting.
So these guys were either parking it or we're not.
Absolutely. Just like Matt said, it was a single, walk, or a home run.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that's just it. And that's, and you got to think there's a level of risk of injury. There's a level of just maybe you just don't want them to leg out those doubles, those guys. I mean, I don't know that there's a purpose for it, I mean, just, if you get on base for those guys, that's the key. It's either a home run, you get an RBI, or it's a single.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
So something that Sammy did in 97, 98, and 99 is he led the league in strikeouts.
Right.
Yeah. So in 98, he had 66 home runs. How many strikeouts do you think he had?
In 98.
98.
I guarantee he's close to 200.
It was 171.
See, guys get close to 200 and stuff. So to me, those numbers aren't like, especially McGwire's 155 doesn't seem astronomical. It should. But again, when you're putting up the other kind of numbers, then you go, I mean, that's very doable. Whereas those guys like Sean Casey, some of those players that were around for a while where they would get up to, close to 200, if not 200 strikeouts a season.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, they're batting like 240, but they're getting 40 home runs, and they're getting, they're getting 95 RBIs, so it's like a really tricky scenario that it came to where it was okay to strike out there for a while. And then now it's just like, it's kind of how baseball goes, right? Is just in kind of trends. So it became a thing to kind of play a little more small ball there for a while. And the Royals, took advantage of that. That's the only way we're going to win. We're not going to have guys hitting 60 home runs for a combination of we just don't have the money. We don't have the ballpark for it. We have a pitcher's ballpark. So there's, I think trends just go in some ways where for a while there it was okay to give up 200 Ks potentially. If you could get a guy who could hit 40 home runs, it was like a fair trade-off where those guys, I don't know, you can deal with those guys anymore,
Yeah, you have a good point there, Matt. If you got a clutch hitter, you can put up with a lot of strikeouts. It's situational. And I see that so often. If you can guy be a 220, but if he's a great situational hitter, he's going to prove his worth.
He's worthy, right? Because not every strikeout is equal, right? Like that strikeout in the 8-0 game where you're getting beat and it's the 9th inning and the game's over is a different strikeout than, again, when it's on the line, clutch guy, like you're saying, right?
Yeah. So
see, that's why you've got a good player there in that Perez, because he's a good situational hitter. Besides, he's a good hitter all around. Well, those guys are invaluable.
So what do you think? So McGwire, do you think that he batted 250, 300, or 325
for that season?
Did
he? I don't think he had 325. I'll say 300.
He was 299.
299. Yeah.
Pretty good. That's higher than I would have guessed.
Yeah. He was 299. Sammy was 308.
Yeah. It's really, again, it's just an incredible season to have happening, simultaneously. That's the other piece.
Interesting tidbit here, fellas, is that Mabry just hit there a while back for the Cardinals in that game. He's with your Royals coaching staff right now, John Mabry.
Yeah.
So, so we've got the pitcher up now.
Yeah,
right?
Merker.
Do you like the pitcher or do you like the DH?
Oh, I got to be honest with you. I like the DH. I really do, even though I'm a National League guy. I just think we need offense in the game for a lot of, let's say, the superficial fan. The superficial fan doesn't want to see a pitcher's duel. They want to see hitting.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I went out a few weeks ago. It was 100 degrees that day, and I was very pleased with the pitcher's duel.
2-hour ball game.
Well, I was sitting through this, boys.
Come on.
I was sitting in right field, and it was 100 degrees, and the sun was
scorcher.
Right there. Now there was probably, if we're being generous, 7,000 people out there.
Yeah,
of course.
So you could go sit wherever you wanted, but still, we were out there with a birthday party, a big group.
Yeah.
So it was easier to kind of stay in your assigned seats or stay in your seating area because.
But to Bruce's point, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And I kind of, back in the day, I would have told you is like when I was a little more like I wanted to be a cool baseball purist, I would have said, oh yeah, the DH, it's more strategy if you have the pitcher hit and all those things. But yeah, no, I would agree with you. And I think it does go back to, like you're saying, is that, not only just casual fans, but young fans, they want action. They want to see, kids. And that points back to, again, why are we making a big deal of the sticky stuff?
Yeah.
Right. Because it's taken away from the hitting. And if the hitting is down, that is not good for baseball. Here we are talking about what was the miracle for baseball here. And it wasn't like the two pitchers dueling it out. It was two hitters hitting home runs. The long ball, baby. That's what sells, the long ball.
Is this Old Busch Stadium?
Yeah. Let me think. No. This would be the newer ballpark.
It is.
Yeah, because remember it had the Big Mac section then.
Okay. Well, you were talking about stadiums.
Now Jack Buck, the Cardinal announcers, in there with those fellas now, Steve Stone and Chip Carey.
Yeah. So speaking of kids, what's Jack Buck's kid doing? Is he an announcer too?
Jack Buck's kid does everything. He does the World Series. He does the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of the Royals fans don't like him very much, and I understand why. But he has been a gifted guy with his name. But he had to prove himself. So I mean, you got to give him credit for that. But it's amazing how much really big ball games he gets to be the primary announcer.
So, Bruce, are you a Joe Buck fan?
Guy.
Mixed feelings about Joe. I really think that he's pretty good, but I also think he might be very blessed that he has gotten so far and gotten so high.
Why do you think people don't like him?
I think they think he's pretty pro St. Louis, but I guess you don't notice that too much. If you're a Cardinal fan, you kind of think, well, that's just
How you're supposed to be.
He's just speaking the truth. No, he's not pro St. Louis. He's just speaking the truth. It's God's country.
I think a lot of people are a little bit angry with him too, that he was able to go so far on his dad's name. That's it. But
it's yes, I think it's hard on two levels.
You still have to honor that he was a good broadcaster. Maybe he's not completely unbiased, but I actually think on those football games, he's pretty good. Now on baseball, I can see why he might have a little bias.
Yeah. Oh, I've honestly come more around to him than I honestly have. Now we have some other new announcers that people seem to love, and so I've now come around to Joe Buck just because I'm going. Y'all give Joe Buck a lot of trouble, but to me he's every bit as good as these other guys coming up, And I don't. I think it kind of gives. If Joe Buck, if you really look at it and think about it, he's probably smart to give a little bit of his bias in there and have some fun, because we all know that, like, as much as we love to love people, we also love to hate people, right? And so I think Joe Buck isn't dumb and it's a careful line you have to ride, right? Because you don't want to be hated by everyone either.
No.
But if you've got everyone, you got this kind of mix, half and half, and you've got these people that kind of troll you and are on you. I think that's a smart balance to have as an announcer. And he probably rides it pretty well and seems to take it pretty well. I think he gets it that people don't love him.
Yeah.
And he gets kind of self-deprecating and kind of, understands that, okay, but I think what's good about him too. And I think what can be aggravating about him too, is that he does have a sense of like this. And they put him with Troy Aikman too, right? Which is like the level of ego and arrogance in that room together. I can't believe they can fit them both their heads in that same space. No,
right.
Well, I've been on record as saying I have no issue with Joe Buck. He has called
I know you're a Joe Buck guy.
My baseball and my football team. Yeah. So I have any issue I've had with the guy, that's gone.
Yeah.
So there we saw Traxel had a 14-7
record.
14-7 and a 4.2 ERA.
Yeah. I don't think he tossed it up. I think I character assassinated Steve Traxel here. I really do think, though, looking back, that my brain back farther, it was the Bonds one that I thought was a little bit suspect. Yeah. But like they literally brought a guy in like the 8th inning and he was terrible. And it was like, okay, someone's going to give this bomb up to Bonds. Let's let it be this kid,
Right.
Well, the other thing too, we were talking about McGwire and Sosa, in 98. The other thing that was going on, Bruce had mentioned on the other side in the American League, the Yankees won 114 games that year.
114. Isn't that amazing?
So smoked the Padres, right? Yeah. Didn't we?
Yeah, they beat the Padres 4-0.
4 in a row.
That was their if you remember, isn't it the 98 Yankees that all the Yankees fans are always like, oh, that's one of the best teams of all time, right? Because
so they had a lineup that had Posada, Tino Martinez, Chuck Knobloch, Jeter, Scott Brocious, Chad Curtis, Bernie Williams, Paul O'Neill, Darryl Strawberry, Tim Raines, Chili Davis, Ricky Leday.
Oh, they had some great players.
And then pitchers were Orlando Hernandez, Pettit, Hideki Arabu, David Cohn, David Wells.
Yeah.
And then I think that was the year. I don't think Rivera was on that team, but I want to say he was a setup guy.
Yeah.
I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's just showing how good they were. Right?
Maybe no. I think that take that back. Maybe he was.
So this was when Chuck Knobloch could still throw to first base.
Yeah,
apparently.
That's a good question. When did he stop throwing?
Isn't that such an interesting thing to have?
Well,
to someone?
Sure
that thing with the gymnast Biles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She got the gymnast version of the yips.
The yips a little bit, and that's such a real thing, and it's such an our brains are just so interesting in that way. Something that becomes so rote for these athletes and becomes so, is now, again, they can't do it at all.
That might have been around the time where Knobloch got the yips. Because like I was trying to explain, because there's the new season of Ted Lasso. There's an episode where they
I caught it.
They've got the yips, and so
the penalty kicks. He can't
say anything.
Oh,
you can't say the Y word.
Right.
We don't even say that word out loud.
That's right.
But so like it was weird how that episode came out, like right around the time that Simone Biles got
we don't.
What
I don't think we know.
What are they calling it? The twisties?
I don't know.
I think that's what they were saying. The twisties, like. Yeah, it seems like it would be more dangerous for a gymnast than it would be for like a baseball player. Even though
right.
The video I was looking up of Knobloch, like his thing was he couldn't throw the ball from second base to first base.
That's right.
Right. The first video, when you look up Chuck Knobloch yips, you know what it is? It's him hitting Keith Olbermann's mom.
Really?
With the ball.
Oh no.
If you Google Chuck Knobloch yips,
she was in the crowd or something.
First video is Chuck Knobloch hits Keith Olbermann's mom with errant. Basically, it's a routine ground ball to second base, and he just airmails it. It hits Keith Olbermann's mom. She's probably 15, 20 rows up on right field.
Could you imagine? Again, it's just that's just such a mental, and that's where it goes back to. I think again, we marvel at athletes, which is good. And so then sometimes we can kind of downplay it and go, well, they're just playing a game and things. But at that level and I mean, especially like a Simone Biles, where you're like, and these guys too, I mean, let's be honest, they're putting their lives at risk in some ways too. When these pitchers, they're hoping these pitchers don't get the yips, right? Because when these pitchers get the yips, then they're throwing 100 miles an hour at your dome, and that is not safe. And so for those gymnasts, there ain't no way. And if my brain ain't ready to do 15 flips in the air and then land it, then I'm not doing it. I promise you. I wouldn't have done it to begin with. Right. But I definitely ain't doing it if my brain is saying, no, it ain't time. You
it also stinks of the timing of it for.
Right. Sure. It's
like
such
the biggest stage,
it's the most brutal thing. It's the terrible for Chuck Knobloch. I mean, on a smaller level, but for anybody, people do it in their own. Look at there's young Buck there. There's old young Joe Buck for a second.
The Cardinals famously had a pitcher that got the yips. Rick Ankiel. Remember him?
He turned into a field player. He played for us. By the end of it, remember?
He had to convert to center fielder. He was like might have been his rookie or his second year, but it was like a playoff game.
Yeah.
And he threw like 5 wild pitches in the first inning. Yeah. Or he threw 5. It might have been down the road, but he threw like 5 wild pitches in an inning.
You're right. I remember that well.
Couldn't hit home.
Kid. Isn't that wild? I mean, again,
they're throwing at Traxel today. They didn't like the way that Traxel pitched.
It was
pitched
really,
McGwire here.
It was sad to see Rick be able to. I mean, to have a downfall in pitching, because in the beginning he really looked like lights out pitcher, and then all of a sudden he becomes this guy who can't throw a strike, and it was sad to watch. He was fortunate enough he could hit well enough that he could stay in baseball, but incredible. We Cardinal fans think what might have been if this guy could have had some control, because he really did have major league stuff with his arm, no doubt about it.
We went through it here with Greinke, right, a little bit, where he finally came out on the end of it, right? But Greinke almost did that exact same thing. I mean, Greinke had basically told the organization that, hey, listen, I'm going to play shortstop or I'm donezo. Right? Like, and they're like,
oh yeah, that I do remember that, where he's like, yeah, I just kind of want to go mow yards.
I want to, he was, or just play or be an everyday, because he's a pretty good hitter. He's always been a pretty good hitter, and he was a shortstop growing up, and he just was like, I'm bored with pitching. I don't want to pitch anymore. I'm done, man. And he was always a little bit of an aloof guy, a little bit different anyway. And so, this organization, again, this is what bugged me about when he left here. But the organization, again, not many organizations would, but our organization was like, hey, take your time, get it together. You're not playing shortstop though, bro. We're going to use you as a pitcher, but you take your time, get your stuff together. And then sure enough, he became, what he became, but it's such a head game for a lot of these guys, I think for everyone, right? I mean, I think they're doing a job just like, all of us are, and we could all get the yips in our own jobs. in our own lives, in our own, relationships, whatever it is, where
what
things
would be
just
the
weirdly stop
teacher
working.
What would be the teacher equivalent of the yips?
Oh, dude, believe
Look at
me.
Lance Johnson smoking one.
Yeah.
Laser beam.
Oh,
Look at this though,
man.
Mabry. Boom on his wheels.
That was a
there.
big play.
Wait, is his
that
name-
would have been a
is it-
bases loaded double.
What's this guy? Is his first name John?
Yeah, John Mabry.
John Mabry.
He was
'Cause
also a hitting coach there at the Cardinals for a while, but he came over when Matheny came over here. He came with him.
Who was the good Royals? What was his name? John Mayberry? Was he also
Oh, yeah,
John?
he played with
John
the Royals.
Mayberry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
big first baseman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, a few weeks ago, Annika got to go on the field
Yeah.
for the Royals game. She was
Right.
on the
Fun.
Jumbotron and stuff. And as we're kind of going down to take pictures, there was a dude wearing an Amos Otis Royals jersey.
Mhm.
A+. That is
A-O.
amazing.
Man, how
Yeah,
about
there
that?
you gotta. The Royals, see, again, there's the piece of like we don't have that many, we don't have the history that a lot of teams do,
Yeah.
So our
It's
old school
understandable,
guys,
Matt. When you started in '69, you can't have that many years.
exactly.
Like the Cardinals, clear back in 1800s, practically.
But the thing is like, if you're like the Cardinals have had down years.
Yes,
Sure.
particularly in the '70s.
They have had down years. So it's not
They aren't super great this year, are they?
We were good in the '60s and good in the '80s.
Where are they at right now, Bruce?
Oh, they're not so hot this year. One
I
over
didn't-
500.
Yeah, I didn't think they were having
So,
the best year
But you
this
guys,
year. I mean,
you
they
guys
have 'em.
raised a really good point earlier. And my son points that out to me all the time as a Padre fan. He says, you Cardinal fans are so blasted spoiled. You think you have to make the playoffs every year. You think the World Series not official unless you're in it. Come on.
that World Series didn't count.
This is a
That one
big,
didn't count.
but Bruce, this is a good problem though for you, right? Like this is what I hope we're starting to get with the Chiefs a little bit, where we've had this run of time where now it really does feel like if we're, next year, if we don't make the Super Bowl, it is going to be a level of disappointment,
Yeah.
and I think
you're going to have a little bit of that happening with you with Mahomes.
right,
Because,
sure,
It's
exactly.
going to be hard for you if let's say you lose a first round playoff game, or
We're gonna be pissed.
that's going to really
Yeah.
you're going to wonder, well, what happened? And you get spoiled when you win all the time. You really do. And then you get all these fair weather fans buying everything under the sun. And
Right, or that abandon ship immediately when things go bad,
Well, have you heard
or
the,
again, it's just
so-
go ahead, sorry, Andy.
I was going to say, have you heard the season ticket? This, by the way, this is literally like what happens at a baseball game, right? Like the game's on
yeah,
and you sit here and you just talk about whatever.
Yeah, and then something
And then
cool
all of a
happens.
sudden you kind of look up and you go, hey, Fernando Tatis is up. Hey,
Yeah.
David's a fan of his kid.
yeah.
But hey, did you
Who's
hear
a
about
Padre, right?
hear about the Cowboys tickets at Arrowhead this year?
Oh, when you guys get a second here, I've just got to interject something about Fernando Tatis, the
All right,
guy
let's-
that's up here now.
Go ahead. We can talk. We'll talk about the Cowboys.
Here is a
second.
piece of trivia that many people have no idea. This is a guy who hit 2 grand slams in 1 inning. 2 grand
Wow.
slams in 1 inning.
That is wild.
I don't know if that'll ever be done again, let alone somebody
That's
doing
ins-
it.
That's
he did.
insane. In this, was it this
Let's,
year or around this
I'd
year?
like to know what year it was.
All right,
Yeah, with the
let's lay
Cardinals.
out here for a second.
Okay, 'cause
McGwire
Mac's
is coming
coming
up.
up again.
We're running at 58, 23, 24, 25. A lot of new baseballs being put in.
Yeah. This could very well be the time he does do it.
Yeah, I can't.
First pitch.
Oh, and it barely clears, like you said.
Line
Bruce.
drive right over that wall.
Yeah.
4th inning.
Is Sosa happy? Is Sosa?
Yeah, Sammy's clapping for him.
Yeah, but is he happy? The question
No.
is, right? Again, I think we all, and good for him for being a great sport. And I think he knew it was coming, you know, like obviously. So, but I'm just curious, like in his own brain, is he going, dang, man, I wish that was me right now? I think naturally he would be.
The Cardinals allowed his son to be a bat boy for a long period of time there, just so he would be around when he did that.
That's right. I remember that. Again, it's just it's storybook level stuff, you know, and it is a really interesting home run. You're right, because that looks like an Ichiro home run or something, you know, like that looks like it was just a little laser beam, you know, that just had just enough to get over the fence.
It's ironic that that was the one that broke the record, because he had these mammoth shots, and particularly in some of these ballparks. And then in that
there's
one,
your shot for the producer. Here's your
this
dream
is
shot.
His son. But it was a great moment, because it's history at that point, no doubt.
Well, and it is interesting too that it basically just got over the wall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that like Bruce was saying, like, and you know, it was like people in left field upper deck are standing up, and you know, they're people around, you know, like if you had right field seats for this game, there's probably a very slim chance you were getting a home run ball.
That's right.
But
Correct.
you know, one thing we didn't talk about is people would actually get to these Cardinals games very early.
Yeah.
To watch batting practice.
That's right.
That it became that era too, where people would come early. Just there's Bud Selig.
Yeah, there's Bud Selig. He was a commissioner then.
Bud Selig always looks like somebody just asked him to solve a very complicated math.
There's Stan Musial was there that night too.
And Bud Selig. Oh, here you go with Sosa. I mean, come on. This is just there's just a level of like, oh, come on.
Little too bro-ish. A little too bro-ish for you.
There's a freaking baseball game to play here, boys. Jeez, get a room.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's fun. And again, I think the level of looking back on it, you know, what is it, 23 years, like we said, is always going to have a look at him go. He's just eating this up, which good on him. I mean, but
he was very subdued going.
Where's he going?
Going
now?
into the Maris's.
What's happening?
Going
to his family.
He's going in the stands for somebody.
You know, I mean, if you remember how Roger Maris was treated,
that's his.
Like the press was very unkind to Roger Maris.
Oh, they were. You could go on and on about that, guys.
It was terrible.
And they made him so unwelcome in many ways, because they wanted Mantle to win that thing. They didn't want Maris, some kid or some young guy from North Dakota. Come on, give me Mickey. Come on.
Exactly. Or just to let it be Babe Ruth, you know. I mean, he had, you know, at that point, of course, had built such a mythology about him, you know, too, that it was, he was deemed kind of unworthy, right, to break it. And then, you know, and look at this. I mean, again, it's, I don't know. It's not my style. If I was breaking this record, this isn't what I'd be doing, but I also get it, because again, it's hard, and I don't know.
I don't know, man. These things like this, they're stopping games for now.
Yeah, they really are.
But dude,
have everybody's attention.
They do.
One thing
but
this has gone.
This is like, you know, even all the 3,000 hits and stuff. And again, it isn't a record like this, I know, but they usually stop the game. They give them a ball. They give a big round ovation. But good Lord, this is like a world WWE extravaganza here.
Going to hug everybody as well.
No kidding.
One of the things that we feel proud about, Cardinal fans, is the way we treated Maris, because Maris came over to us before he retired in 67 and 68. Mike Shannon, our broadcaster, became a very personal friend of his and welcomed him, and they made him really feel happy, so that as he finished his career in St. Louis, he kind of got over some of that hurt that he had in New York. So that was a nice thing that happened to Maris.
And he ended up staying here, in Missouri. And
you know, I know Cardinals haven't always been kind to everybody. I mean, I can tell you stories about how unkind we were to Gary Templeton, but that's for another broadcast.
Well, it's because he didn't sign David's card. So that there was a reason for that. So Matt, earlier, first of all, how great would it have been if he wouldn't have touched first base and they would have peeled?
There would have been, it would have been so amazing. Yes, there's so many like Naked Gun movie turns you could have here that would have been hilarious, right? Like they go back, like if there was instant replay, right, or something back then too, and they're like, this was just on the other side of the foul pole. Sorry, McGwire, and he's in the middle of his speech,
Yeah, this is kind of WWE-ish. You're right. He grabbed the mic, he's cutting a promo.
He's hitting up Sosa. Sosa's hitting him with the with the two finger.
I think that they genuinely liked each other.
Yeah.
I don't think that was contrived or anything.
No, like that. I mean, come on, Sosa's a likable guy. I don't know again about McGwire, but Sosa's just like Sosa's again. That's why he was the perfect person for this to happen to. Yeah. Whereas Bonds, right, was kind of the opposite. And that's where he became, in some ways, more of the back to the Maris figure of like people didn't want him to break it. People didn't, and he was much more, off-putting to the media, much more off-putting to fans, as opposed to these guys. McGwire was just a pretty quiet guy. I mean, you always had dudes like Canseco that would, how could you talk when you had Canseco next to you too?
Well, and I think that. So
Canseco.
This happened.
Canseco's even weirder. I mean, think about Canseco, where he's at now. He's talking about he's all kinds of, I think he believes he got abducted by a UFO or something.
Canseco's always been kind of
he's a wild one.
Yeah. So after this, it comes out a few years later that both of these guys were on steroids. Right. So like Bruce, does it dampen before we even jump into that?
Yeah.
How long's it been since you've seen this?
Oh, it's been several years.
And kind of what, as that ball was going out, what were you feeling? What were you feeling?
I had a sense of joy again because of accomplishment, not necessarily that particular drive, but a sense of accomplishment. And I give him credit for a lot of things. He had a distinguished career, but where I kind of get down on him a little bit is that, he kind of got arrogant later and said, well, these other guys don't know how to hit because they don't take pitches and they don't walk enough and things like that. And that's the kind of pitching coach or hitting coach he was. And so I think he got a little arrogant about hitting in general, but generally speaking, as far as the home run's concerned, I gave him a lot of credit.
Yeah. So I'm curious, can I as far as not speaking just for you, Bruce, but as speaking more kind of macro, the whole entire St. Louis kind of baseball community, do they pretty much embrace McGwire as in some ways nothing has happened?
Here was one of the problems that they had down there. There was a lot of fraudulent autographs in St. Louis. They were coming out with Mark McGwire autographs everywhere under the sun.
I'm sure.
And one of the times when he was not playing, he went to all the card shops in St. Louis, and he swore that most of them had fraudulent material. Now I don't know if he was right in that, because he really condemned a lot of people who were doing that for a living. But the sad part of it was he just opened up this can of worms about what's genuine autographing and what isn't genuine autographing. And that kind of thing continues today, fellas. It really does.
It is interesting. Yeah, no. And I think so. There's a memorabilia piece that he's kind of alienated some folks, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then again, is it as much as I know it's hard for it's I know San Francisco fans got to deal with this too. If you want to say, hey, Bonds, that you've got that, always got to worry. The next person's always going to say steroids, well, the steroids, well, this, well, that. And I think that's where I've tried to kind of, as a fan of sports, is try to look more at the front of the jersey than the back. Right. And when you see that, you got this sense of pride of like for St. Louis baseball, for the tradition of baseball. And you go, well, because it was Mark McGwire, a very imperfect vessel, right, that did it, doesn't take away maybe from the actual feeling and accomplishment of it,
Right.
Right. Because we're all again, there's not all these guys that we build up, we don't know them for real. We don't know. We don't want to know. And again, like you said with Kirk Gibson, tell me that a Ty Cobb, tell me that some of these guys back in the day would not have cheated and didn't cheat. They did cheat.
So
they just did it in different ways.
I mean, a lot of the guys in the 70s and 80s were on speed and cocaine.
Every pill under the sun, the black
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so do we take away stolen base records because a guy was hopped up on cocaine?
Sure. And they were running on artificial turf. Remember, keep that in mind. That, Willie Wilson and all those guys, Ricky Henderson, about half their career was on, artificial turf baseball fields, a lot of them, which changes everything for guys like that.
You're right.
So, man. I mean, it's kind of an era thing. Pete Rose isn't in because he bet on baseball.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not going to.
That's where it goes. But see, I think back to Bruce's point, that's the problem with Rose, and the problem with McGwire is you want to be on their side, and then they start to talk. Yeah. And then you're like, ooh, these guys are jerks. I don't want to be on their side.
And Sammy, Sosa, and Roger Clemens and like I remember those
Clemens had
those testimonies.
Yeah.
All of those guys, Sosa, Clemens,
Clemens was a mess.
McGwire, Palmero, with Bagwell, Jeff Bagwell, was he one?
Who else went up there? What's the Dodgers? What's the Dodgers? Or not the catcher?
Piazza.
Yeah, didn't he? Wasn't he in the mix and all that?
I mean, and that's the thing is like you don't know how widespread it was, right? So McGwire was on steroids.
Yeah.
But was anyone else hitting 62 and 70 home runs?
No.
Because you can't tell me that he was the only one on steroids.
No.
And we've talked about that the pitchers actually are the ones that introduced the steroids into baseball because of the recovery aspect.
Yeah, sure.
When we talk about steroids, the thing that steroids do that people just automatically assume, oh, you take steroids, you get big.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the reason that you get big is because, well, first of all, you're getting this growth hormone pumped into your body at massive levels, but it's the recovery that allows your muscles to recover and allows you to do those more strenuous workouts faster, longer, those types of things. So instead of needing 3 days to recover, you're getting, recovery in a day or two. And so you can do more.
It makes a huge difference. And again, you're exactly right. And I think that was always baseball folks' argument was that, well, you go hit a baseball then, right? Because no steroid can, when you're facing a pitcher throwing 98 miles an hour with all kinds of spin, all kinds of, from that distance, I don't care. Steroids do not help you hit a baseball. Do they help you hit a baseball farther? So that is the question, right?
The question.
And so that's the other piece, right? Is that, yes, they don't give you a competitive edge in one area, but in another area you go, well, but like you said, it isn't like a magic pill, like a Jack and the Beanstalk deal. It's, you have to still work. You have to still be a good baseball player. It's not like me or you could all of a sudden start shooting anything up and these guys.
Here's the other thing about baseball is it's the only sport where the playing field is not uniform.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing some of the advanced statistics they put up at the Royals game now is like, or maybe it wasn't there. Maybe I saw it on TV, but somebody will hit a home run and they'll be like, this would have been a home run in 27 of 30 parks or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the Blue Jays are playing in the AAA, the Buffalo AAA park.
Yeah.
Right. Soccer has a little different, does have a maximum and minimum, but it isn't a huge. I mean, there are some fields that are wilder than others, but no.
You had talked about the Cardinals putting this field around McGwire. They literally built the field in San Francisco for Bonds.
1,000%.
Short porch and right field.
1,000%. I mean, they did it. The Yankees have a huge advantage at home because they're not stupid. They put guys, they've always, especially back in the old stadium.
Yeah.
They always had guys that could hit it out of that little, and it ends up being they literally hit it 278 feet, straight up in the air, and it's a home run.
It was interesting when the Dodgers moved out to LA in the first couple of years before they had Chavez Ravine. They played in a almost unusual stadium, and Wally Moon is a name that I remember. He played for them, and he hit all these shots. He was a left-handed hitter, hit all these shots over the left field fence, and had this miraculous year. only because he could hit the ball 251 feet.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
and like do you remember Dante Bichette?
Yes, the Colorado Rockies
now, Bo.
Yeah, Colorado. He was hitting bombs in Colorado. Like his splits at his home and away splits.
Yeah.
Were like he I don't know. One year he hit like 40 home runs and like 30 of them came at home and 10 on the road.
Yeah.
It's incredible. The statistics, you'd go, oh no, it can't be that whole like thin air, blah, 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 blah. But I mean, the statistics show you that that's a thing. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a physics deal. Of course it is. I mean, there is a level of science to the game that is, and maybe baseball has more science in the midst of it maybe than most, because there is a level of physics that's going on. That's why the sticky tacky, not to keep going back to it, but that's why it matters, because if I can grip that ball just a little bit easier, then I can spin that sucker just that much hard, better. And man, does that make that tough to hit, and so that's the piece is like these pitchers.
I've often thought about Rose, guys, because that is unbelievable that you get 4,000 hits in a career. I mean, just think about that. I don't care if he bet on everything under the sun. That is a major accomplishment.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to probably will never be equaled, even with these guys playing 20 years, because Rose must have never gotten hurt on top of everything else.
He played every day. He played hard. He played the game right. Again, that's what it's so, I mean, everything about him in my, body would be a fan of his and would argue that he should be there. But then there's also a part of me that again, if there is someone who's kind of disgraced the game, like if there's an argument for no matter what you do as a talent, right, that you can still sully and dirty the game enough that you shouldn't be honored. He tests that theory, right?
You have a really good point there, Matt. And that's the dilemma for us.
Right.
We'd like to honor their achievement, but they have spoiled the game.
Yeah,
they've marred it. We can't deny that. They've marred the game.
Yes.
I mean, unfortunately, they have great accomplishments, but we're always going to weigh that against what they've done in that regard.
Yeah.
And
they're not contrite. Like a guy like Rose has never been contrite about it or never in any way been like, my bad on that, my bad for the game. It's always been about him and his promotion of him. And so that's to me, the ugly part of it is that again,
that's another thing about him, Matt, is that, he's arrogant and he is very selfish and self-absorbed. And so that's got to play into your thinking about him a little bit because, he's also was a bad adulterer and things like that. I mean,
well, and that brings up an interesting point too. Well, that brings up an interesting point too. Like, is it the Hall of Nice Guys?
I know, Andy.
Right.
I know. So, I know where you fall on it, and I understand because if you do that, you're right. Like, and I don't think we want to do that, right? I don't know that we want to go back into everyone's private lives and go, well, he wouldn't be in. This guy shouldn't be in. They did this. They did that. I mean, it's a careful line that you have to draw. But to me, Pete Rose is that guy who probably steps over it because, again, we're not digging for Pete Rose dirt. He's putting it out there himself by very much self-promoting himself in that way. Again, I would love to see him because I think most people are on his side that he needs to be back, that he should be in. But again, but he always doesn't. He should just let that be as opposed to try to do what he does, which makes it gross. And he just doesn't get it, on that level, So, I mean, and back to McGwire, I think, again, that's where it comes down to is, and it is a safety. There's the other piece, right, Andy? And this is where it goes back to the Charles Barkley, we're not role model piece, right? What do we do with McGwire here and Bonds and with Sosa and all the guys who take steroids? Because this is not a healthy thing to do. Okay. And it's incredibly bad for you, in a lot of ways. And so that became obviously a part of it as well, is that like, do we want to promote this to our young people and all those things as something that's okay to do? That's the other piece, because it's not just cheating, right? It isn't a level of just like, hey, I'm putting some sticky stuff on the ball, I'm actually putting something in my body that is definitely not good for me. That is going to make me better at this game, which is another level,
Yeah, it is a dicey situation because you're seeing guys now that have personal trainers, personal chefs, personal physicians, personal nutritionists, personal massage therapists, right? So they have all of this thing because it is such a big business.
Yeah, they have a cadre
when they get to that, so we talk about, I think we said McGwire has played 16 years. What's the way that you ensure that these guys make a lot of money, a long career?
Yeah.
Keep them injury free.
That's right.
If you get injured, your earning power goes down, right? Because your contracts are, this guy's got an injury history.
The money has gotten out of control, and it's hard to blame the players. I get mad when we blame the players, because I don't think that's fair. But I do think there's a level of it is ultimately ruined it, because how does a Mark McGwire not justify to himself that, hey, why not do this? It may take a few years on the back end of my life, but man, I've set up my kids, my kids' kids, my kids' kids' kids, generational levels of money. There's a sacrifice to it that you go. And so you go, okay, yeah, if I didn't hit these 60 home runs, or 62 home runs or whatever, and end up with 70, then that's literally the difference between $500 million or so to me, potentially down the road, or whatever. So how do you not go, all right, shoot me up, again?
Yeah.
That's the kind of money that you go, it's worth it. Think about what there's always those, dilemmas, right? What would you do for $1 million? Would you do this? Like, it starts to get into that, oh man, maybe I would. If you're offering me $50 million to put a syringe up my butt, that's gonna maybe give me, I don't know, make my balls shrink or something. I don't know. Whatever it does that ain't good, take a few years off my life. You go, damn, $50 million. My kids are good forever. My kids' kids are good forever. You know what I mean? Like, I have now, but again, it's
guaranteed security.
Right. So part of you goes, is it morally wrong not to do it? Because at this point, I'm literally telling my kids that, I could have set you up for, for your whole life. And again, your kids' kids and your kids' kids' kids probably, but I wouldn't take a little shot that would make me a better home run hitter for a year or two.
Right. Yeah. It's
a crazy dilemma.
It really is.
It very much is.
Because I think that, most people they're going to take the money.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why we judge these guys. And it's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't.
But it also depends on when you ask. Right. So when you ask the question, where's that person? Right. So you have let's say you have some kid in the Dominican Republic that doesn't have shoes, doesn't have running water, lives in a mud hut.
Right.
And you say, you can throw a ball pretty good and you can hit a ball pretty far. But you've got warning track power.
Yeah.
If you take this drug,
right,
suddenly, instead of you hitting, say, 20 home runs a year, you're going to average 45.
Right.
Yeah.
If you average 45 home runs, that's going to translate to a $16 million a year salary.
Yeah, you're living in a mansion now. You're in a mansion with like 7 cars.
Or you're going to be a AAA player.
Yeah.
Right. You've got AA talent.
Yeah. Again, it is, what do you expect out of these guys? Right. And so there's just a level of where the money skews everything, because it takes right or wrong out of it a little bit. It takes, again, it's like that movie, Indecent Proposal or whatever. There's a level of, there's a price for everything, and that's not good. It goes back to a very kind of bad thing about our nature, and about us maybe as a like a species, but it's just so natural to do. And so again, unfair to judge others when they do decide to make that decision, because I don't know. Again, I've gone both ways on this. Like I said, if he was a Royal, Bruce, I probably would be over here arguing, steroids, who cares?
Well,
but he's a Cardinal, so I'm like, keep him out.
Well, and the interesting thing too is that this entire era, the stars of this era, there are very few of them that are actually in the Hall of Fame, right?
Very few.
No Clemens.
No
Canseco, no McGwire, no Sosa, no Bonds. No Kurt Schilling, no.
It is such a contentious. None
of these guys are in. But
they'll make it? Here's what I think. In 10 years now, if we're still doing this podcast, we'll get on here and we'll be talking about how I think that they'll all eventually get in. I think probably Pete Rose will get in. There's a level of here's what the Hall of Fame likes to do too. If they really want to mess with you, they like to kind of wait till you're dead or almost dead, right. And then put you in, or do something for you, Yep. So I think if that they will be in, it's more of a question of
Mark. I think you're right. Good point.
Well, and the thing is the line moves. The line gets shifted.
Yeah.
What's acceptable moves forward. It moves backwards.
Right. Yeah. Time heals all wounds. They say time heals all wounds.
It either heals it or it just makes them.
And here's the other piece. Honestly, I think all of us probably are at a point, and we'll see how things go. But our Hall of Fames and all that piece a little antiquated, in some ways too, in 20, 50 years by now, because does it even become like a that big of thing? Is it more of a thing to just put up the big numbers, get the big contracts, be famous, be known as the big player? And a Hall of Fame is more of just it's for the players and for the geekier sides of us that love, but for the general public, like a Hall of Fame is not something that means that much in some ways either. I wonder if that could happen too.
I think it's important for the players.
The players.
But I think it would be more important if they are voted in by the players.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's how it would be though. So does McGwire, and then these guys get in if it's a player vote. I'm curious.
Well, because it's a media vote now.
Yeah.
Sure.
Baseball Writers of America vote in or out. So also what was your relationship like with those guys might dictate whether they decide to vote or don't.
Whether you were press friendly or not.
Yeah.
Which is gross, which is a terrible process, which should be on the players. But again, then you get some player things and problems, that there is some bias there. So maybe it's some sort of collaboration of a lot of different groups and not just.
But see, you're also gifted here because you have someone like Perez. Perez gets along with everybody. He's worthy of all the achievements because he does it in the field. And he's a leader with his team.
It is a blessing. You're right.
This is everything.
He's better than
a player. He should be in the Hall of Fame, and he will be.
Right.
But look what he has done exemplary wise.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to get competent in all different areas. Many people can be good on the field, but they're terrible in the clubhouse, or they're terrible in the community, personal relations with people. They're not fan friendly and things like that. And that will and I know it has some bearing on the voting. I'm positive of it.
Yeah. Oh, Perez will be. I mean, yes, I think he helps himself, right? Because he is just an incredibly gregarious, kind. He's great in the community. I think every opportunity he gets, he's like, I love Kansas City. They've been so kind to me. I'm gonna stay here, forever. So. Again, it is a weird where. I know George Brett, guys like that had a little different, relationship with the community where, it was a little more standoffish. But again, if you're a good player, you get away with it regardless. But guys like Perez, like you're saying, who just had and I'm curious, what's a guy like a Cardinals equivalent? I mean, I know Molina was always a loved player and another catcher.
Very much loved, Matt. Very much loved. And
similar guy that's Perez in some ways.
Right. Yeah. I would say, and a guy like Gibson was not that good with the fans, also not that good even with some teammates, but he was so exemplary on the field. I mean, he was just like superhero on the field. He had a year where his earned run average was 1.12.
Yeah.
won two in 1968.
That's what I'm saying. You can be, and some of that, and if you think about it too, like we've talked about, like some of that talent comes with other parts of it, right? And comes with this very like focus and drive that sometimes doesn't equate to being like a people person either, right? So some of these folks who have like hit the highest levels of their field or what they're doing or their sport, they've concentrated so much on it. Their life is so much it. Their attention to detail is so much there that any other periphery things become secondary, and they become not very good at those things either, So, again, you just see there's a million stories, of people like that, where they were just unbelievable on the field. They were great teammates, but when they got out in the public or got out with, in their other parts of their life, they couldn't function, very well,
Yeah.
Well, as we start to wind down, Bruce, tell us what happened to these teams as the season went on.
Well, as the season went on, as we said earlier, it was a better season for the Cubs than the Cardinals. And of course, Sosa got the MVP for the National League. And that was an accomplishment, certainly, that he deserved. And I would say this was a year for the Cardinals. You celebrated McGwire's accomplishments, but you were also a little disappointed in your record and the fact you had these quality ball players, but it didn't materialize in this 90+ win year. So it's like a lot of things in baseball, ambivalence. You have this elation and you have this depression almost simultaneously a lot. And it's the same way with the game. Sometimes you go to a game and your team wins 5-4, but they've hit 4 double play balls and you weren't too happy about that.
No, let's have it right. Or you've had or an injury happens or something that's like, or it's late in the season where, yes, you've gone home with an exciting win there, but you still are buried in the standings and you're going nowhere, We haven't talked enough about Bud. Here's just a quick little Bud before we go. I just think that's perfect to wrap up old Bud Selig, just the perfect guy and the perfect face to say, end whatever's happening because Bud Selig's on. Probably the worst guy in that era and the worst scenario, like probably the one guy who could mess that all up in some ways and did eventually. I don't know if you have a different opinion, Andy or Bruce, but Bud Selig is a hysterical figure to me. Personally.
I think Bud didn't do a great, because I think the thing about Bud is he will, regardless, his legacy will always be the strike.
Right.
And that's the legacy.
Well, that and then the All-Star game, right? The tie All-Star game to me show, because it just, his level of like looking around, not knowing what to do, it being very public, right? He was out there on the front, literally in the front row, just showing how kind of befuddled and goofy, he just couldn't figure it out. And it just was like a perfect microcosm of his time as commissioner, It was like, that's perfect for him. He like, I'm going to mess it up, fiddle fart around, look real dumb, and then make the wrong decision.
Well, I think that's the two things about him that do stand out, like right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what's happened. So
it is, and it's a tough job. No one loves old Manfred now, I'll tell you that much.
It's a very unpopular job. Nobody likes
really
Goodell.
Is. Baseball commissioner's never been a very revered place or job.
The basketball ones seem to skate by. Like people seem to like David Stern and Adam Silver, but like football and baseball, like
they get booed like crazy.
Well, so that we talked about that people had challenged this record for, it stood for 27 years. With Maris, and it took 27 years for it to get broken. Sadly for McGwire, this stood for 3 years. So Barry Bonds broke that 3 years later. Hit 73? That Bonds ended up. It broke it by 3. So
I've always been happy in one regard, though, that Hank Aaron was able to get the home run career thing. because I really thought that he didn't have those individual years, but man, he had that terrific career.
Absolutely.
And end up, and I'm really happy that someone like Hank Aaron was the one who had that record.
Such a great point. Exactly. A very worthy human being, someone who you go, yeah, there's no real controversy there.
No, and if you look back on his career, he had to start out almost with those anti-racial things early in his career, and he had 100%. To ride those buses and everything like that. And he paid his dues. And then when he finally got there, he was a gentleman all the time, just did his job, did it well. And then he can walk away without any enemies. He can walk away with knowing he gave it his best shot, never griped or anything, just did what he did and did it well. And I'm glad that we can revere him that way.
Exactly.
Since he just died.
I know. Well, exactly. And then there's so many other guys too, that didn't get an opportunity, I think get kind of lost in the shuffle because of circumstances, like a Clemente, who was, to me, one of the best ball players in the world, and then, he died in an airplane crash, literally helping, poor people in his country, so you go and you look at some of these ball players now, and again, it is what it is. I mean, we sometimes we can't put them on a pedestal because they're human beings, just like there's good and bad teachers, there's good and bad, cops, there's good and bad, every job, every facet of the, world. And so that's what I've really tried to do again is I don't think I'll ever have another, maybe Mahomes does run that line. I think I got some Mahomes gear, but for the most part, I like to keep it I don't want a personalized jersey of a player.
Right.
I root for the city. I root for the team. I root for my buddies, to be happy and us to be happy and have fun. But as far as just putting those players and people up on a pedestal, you have to be careful, because
you do.
Well, and the thing about the career home run record, as you're talking about Bonds and all of that, that, even 755.
Yeah.
700 is not going to be sniffed for a long time.
No,
guaranteed.
So Pujols is sitting at 675. He may get there.
Yeah. He may get to 700 because he keeps hanging on, but he's done in a year or two.
Yeah, he's not getting to 763.
Yeah. No, I mean,
the next closest would be Miguel Cabrera sitting at 497. So he's not going to get there.
Yeah. No way. No one will, because there's a longevity piece, like Bruce said. There is a different part. It's just a different game and a different time. Henry Aaron probably had to keep playing. Think about it. Henry Aaron had to keep playing and keep making money in some ways. Not that he was a poor man by the end of his career, I'm sure, but he also was, if you pay me $70 million, at some point I'm going to hang it up and enjoy my mansions and my cars. I mean, I'm done. At some point I'm going, do I want to keep going to another training camp, keep grinding it out here? Right. Or, whereas a lot of these guys, the longevity piece had to do with they didn't get paid what they get paid now. And so they had to just keep playing to make the money. Whereas you signed a 10-year contract for, 100 mil, you might just call it good after that 10-year contract.
Well, yeah. And probably the closest guy that you say could possibly do it would be Mike Trout.
Yeah.
He's sitting at 310.
Yeah.
And he's played 11 years.
11 years.
So
he'd need another, another 12 years.
You say, okay, well, let's just say he's going to do the exact same thing over the next 11 years. Well, now he's sitting at 620. He hasn't even reached Willie Mays.
Yeah. No. And honestly, to me, he'd be dumb to do that. I mean, part of me would go, hang it up, buddy. Enjoy your money, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Banging it, around here.
Well, I appreciate you guys doing this watch along with us.
A lot of fun. I'm glad we could do it.
So always. McGwire got on here. He got they walked him. So yep, he would go on to hit 8 more throughout the season. Kind of went into a little bit of a slump.
Last home game, he hit the 69 and 70. I can attest to that, having been there.
Bruce was there.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Incidentally, we're talking about Ankiel.
Yeah.
Ankiel and McEwing, a guy named Joe McEwing, were on base. He hit that 70.
Nice. Well, and I love the story of you being in the parking lot, man. That is what fandom, and that is what, like, there's many concerts that I've been that I'm like, if I can't get in, I'll just sit in the parking lot and kind of hear it, So that's passion, and that's a real fan right there. It's like, hey, I'm going, and if I gotta be even in the parking lot, I can say I was there. So that's awesome.
All right, Matt. Thanks, buddy. We'll catch up soon. All right.
Look forward to your next broadcast.
Thanks.
Right.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, buddy.
All right.